This is the YOB ConvoCast, one-on-one conversations with your other brother's authors, community members, supporters, and friends.
When I'm with you, I feel like I'm already home. When I'm with you, I'm right where I belong. I'm already home.
What's up, friends, and welcome to the YOB ConvoCast, conversations with our community near and far here in Your Other Brothers. My name's Tom. I'm the co-founder editor of YOB, and we're a community navigating faith, homosexuality, and masculinity together. And we are in the series finale of this at-home series exploring the lives, living situations, and life stages of some of our community members. And it's been a joyous summer, a lot of amazing Zoom calls. I've Zoomed with people as far away as Vancouver and as the UK in lots of different directions in between. But for this finale, I figured let's get off of Zoom. Let's hit the road. Let's do something that I don't do that often anymore, which is pack up my microphone in a little nifty carrying case and go on the road for this final episode. And I thought it was only fitting. I mean, it's kind of traumatic, but I'll share some of that story in just a bit. I thought it was only fitting, though, to travel back to a former home of mine for 11 years. Like about a third, a little less than a third of my life that I spent here in this amazing city of Athens, Georgia, to connect with my final guest of this series. He's been on a few times. He is the one and only Dawson. What's up, Dawson?
I was debating doing like a go dogs.
Go dogs.
I don't want to, scar you anymore.
Sick 'em. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so glad you're in Athens with me. We get to record in person. I get to look you in your eyeballs.
I know. I record 99% of my podcasts over Zoom. It's just the way the world works. And to be able to be in the same room as somebody, it's not often that I get to do it. It happens a few times, but I just thought, like, we were talking recently and it was just like all of a sudden it was one of those ideas. As soon as it materialized, I was like, I think that's the decision. I think that's how this series will end. And it'll also include a little trip to visit Athens, and it'll stir up all the feelings as I share my thoughts on Athens, Georgia. You're certainly going to share your thoughts on Athens, Georgia.
Yeah.
And we will put a cap in this at-home series.
Just like the ball cap you're wearing now.
Exactly right.
What is North Carolina.
I'm wearing a North Carolina cap at the moment, which speaks to my current home.
Yeah.
Not this home of yours.
I don't know why you didn't go all out in representing Georgia.
I thought about it. I thought about wearing red or having a G cap or something. Yeah, no, we're not.
Feels like you're still holding yourself back from really embracing Georgia.
Just a bit. Some people know my relationship with Georgia. I've not held much back when it comes to my thoughts and feelings on the state, but on the flip side, it's been a joy to connect with you over these last few years. Like the fact that you live here, the fact that we went to the same church for a season, that's pretty weird. And I didn't know who you were at the time or anything like that. So there's a lot of potential for this episode. I'm hoping for this fiery finale. I hope we're ready to go out with a bang here.
Just like a final tribal council from Survivor.
Who's going to win? Are you going to have the best episode of the series? That's the question.
No, because I relate too much to Amanda Kimmel, who always blew it at the final tribal council.
Inside Survivor knowledge there. Yeah. I'm sure you'll be fine. You came with a literal notebook of notes, which I love. I love it when my guests bring notes. I also love it when my guests wing it. That there's an admiration for both of those styles of coming to the podcast. So I'm excited to hear what you've prepared for us.
Yeah. I mostly just wrote down notes just to organize my thoughts, in case I got to talking and just to help me remember anything else I wanted to add. But, I'm very present. I'm locked in with you. I'm looking in your eyes.
Yeah.
I'm listening. I'm going to go with where this conversation leads.
That's right. And you're going to be very still with your body.
I will try.
You're not going to make noise. You're not going to hit the furniture or hit the microphone or creak in your chair. Hopefully.
Have I done
the listeners
that yet?
will notice? I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know. I haven't paid
notice.
too much attention to that, but the listeners will forgive us if they hear these extra sounds that usually aren't there.
Yes.
When it's two Zoom screens.
You
So,
can 100% blame me. I noticed I've already crossed my legs. I didn't even realize I had done that. So I probably did creak around in the chair. Okay. I'm gonna keep it no, I'm gonna move it back. Okay. All right. Here we go. I'm gonna try to stay like this. This is very hard to sit still.
Okay.
And I'm very, expressive with my hands as well. I can keep my hands. Okay. You can't hear that. I'm waving my hands
I was going to say, wave your hands around.
Yeah,
That's fine.
okay.
As long as you're not hitting things. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good. So in this series, Dawson, I don't know if you've been listening, but we've talked to married guys. We've talked to a dad. We talked to
3 Matts.
3 Matts. Yes, that is a new record for a series, certainly. We've talked to people living with family. We've talked to people living alone. We've talked to people living with straight men and gay men and probably everything in between men.
Yeah.
So the goal of this series was to get a little cross section of all the different living configurations and life stages, some younger, some older. And I didn't even think about you, honestly, at the start of this series. This is what I love about these series that I've done the last few years, is that I sort of have an idea of where it's going, but I don't have like a 17-part plan when I start the series. Like I have 3 or 4 of those parts, but then the rest of them kind of come together as it goes. But I thought about you as the series was unfolding, because we've talked to a couple people, and I know there are many others in our community that have traveled far distances to like change their occupations. But also I think a bigger motivation is just to change their scenery and to be around other people from YOB or other people in the side B world, just to have more community within reach. Maybe it's to change their aesthetic of where they live. If the culture that they're surrounded by, wherever they grew up, maybe isn't their jam and they want to get something a little bit different or a lot bit different.
Yeah.
So we've talked to a few of those people, and I know a few of those people, but what makes you very special, Dawson, very unique, is that you have been in this Northeast Georgia, I call it a death trap, but
my gosh.
No, but you love it here. You've come on the show and you've worn like your bright red UGA sweatshirts and you just love Georgia. I mean, maybe there's a dark side that I don't know about, but like, I just find that very intriguing on the other end of the spectrum as somebody who's always lived here. This has always been your home.
Yeah.
And I want to explore that too, because I also know that's a fair amount of people in our audience that they've never moved anywhere. If they have, it's like across town. It's not like a significant change your life entirely type of move. And I want to try to be unbiased, because my affinity, my personal bias is to like change it up, like get out of what you know, be brave and into the unknown and just like explore what's out there, and God's going to meet you there. But the truth is God's going to meet you if you never leave somewhere either. It's not like it's a mandate that we all need to leave our homes and find a new home. That speaks to my story, and it's happened multiple times now. But even in Asheville, these last 8 years that I've been living in North Carolina, I've really loved it there. And it would take a significant word or a significant propulsion to move me now from North Carolina. And so I'm trying to think about that from like, what if I had been blessed to have that growing up and I never left somewhere?
Yeah.
Would I leave? Like, I'd like to think I'd always be open to leaving if God was really wanting me to be somewhere else. But anyway, I say all that to say I'm entering into this conversation just wanting to get to know why you love Georgia so much, what your thoughts on this place are, and how, what kind of home you see it as. So tell the people, I know I've kind of already given everybody the basic layout, but tell us about yourself. Tell us about your home, your living situation, your life stage. Just a little bit about where you are right now, sitting across from me.
It's funny, being a longtime listener of the pod, hearing and seeing you. Normally, you're so neutral and impartial, and you're just like a great like host and interviewer, and you're just like, you talk about your experiences, but you're just really attuned to the other person's experiences, and you don't have a lot of like, or you set your biases out the door. But you were bringing so much bias, so much subjectivity into this conversation. You hate Athens. You hate Georgia. And it's so interesting. Just, hearing that already just come through. And I can relate to that feeling. It hasn't always been a love relationship with this city. And it's not just a region of Georgia where I have lived. It has literally been the same city. I'm a native Athenian, born in Georgia,
nice.
born in Athens, Georgia, raised in Athens, Georgia, went to middle school and high school in Athens, Georgia, went to college in Athens, Georgia, post-grad Athens, Georgia, old age 30 something, post-grad. Every stage I've been in the same city.
Blink twice if someone's holding you hostage in this city. Okay, I think
I'm trying not to blink.
He's good. He wants to be here, obviously.
This is a choice. So yeah, born and raised in Athens. Didn't used to live it. Oh, I move my legs. I'm sorry. I'm shifting. Pineapple. Okay. So I live alone. I am single. This is my 5th year living alone. Previously I lived with a roommate, and before that I lived with my family. Well, actually a couple different roommate situations, but yeah, I've been living alone for the last 5 years, which I've really liked.
Nice.
Yeah. I just moved into the basement apartment of a couple of friends. There's a couple who live above me with a newborn baby who's so precious. And thankfully there are very thick walls, so I cannot hear her scream and cry, which has been great. I've really enjoyed living there so far. The last 2 years I lived in a duplex by myself. The 2 years before that I lived in an apartment by myself. And I really like living by myself. There are definitely a lot of joys and challenges and stuff people have addressed for sure.
Yeah, let's talk about that first, because we're on a string now. Simon, our last episode, he lives by himself. I live by myself. You live by yourself. So why do you love it so much? Or like, let's just start there, because I know the bigger picture of this episode that I want to focus on is the macro of Georgia and specifically Athens. I wasn't even sure if you had lived in like neighboring towns or like if you. No. So it's always been Athens. Wow. So you're a pure breed, basically. Yeah, that's pretty exciting. Exactly. Purebred Athenian. Yeah. so yeah, living alone, like going from living with people, roommates, situations to living alone, like why is that the move? Why is that suitable to you, or why is it lacking to you, or what's your thoughts? Because then I'll have some thoughts as well to share. Yeah, it's been helpful for me. It's really fitting that we are recording here in this house. I'm currently house sitting, and every time I house sit this place, it's this wonderful. It reminds me of like a woodland resort. Like it's a very quirky, odd house with its eccentricities, but a lot of political eccentricities, which will remain nameless at this point. But I find it very endearing, and it's a really beautiful place in the woods and secluded, really comfortable. And I've been house sitting here, taking care of their cat for maybe going on a decade, a very, very long time. And it's really fitting that we're here, because I was reminiscing on when you brought up the fact that this series was to talk about like home and the idea of home and different home situations. That idea and that concept has been very important for me and has really weighed heavily on me, just feeling a sense of not being at home and not being comfortable anywhere, even living in the same city my entire life. But I had this one intense season of my life in particular that started after a week of house sitting at this place. It was the summer of 2020. And it was after I'd lived with a roommate for a couple of years, and I got to get away, and it was in between transitioning into moving into my first place living alone. And I spent a really extended amount of time here, like a week, maybe even longer than a week. And when I went to leave and end my time here, I started feeling really panicky and very distressed and upset. And it took me a while to realize why I was feeling so panicky and so upset. And it clicked that I had
it was the idea of home that like hit me. I realized that I felt very comfortable and safe and at home in this house alone where I was house sitting, and it become like a place of refuge. It become a really safe, comfortable place. And it was like the only place that I lived where I felt that sense of home and safety and comfort. And I didn't have that growing up, and I didn't have that in roommate situations. I would always feel like I couldn't be myself around the people I lived with. And I'd always try to avoid or escape them anytime I needed rest. I always felt a pressure to hide myself and perform anytime I was around any person I was living with growing up, and any roommate situation. And when I would come here to this place, I was just so comfortable, and there wasn't anyone nearby, and I could just fully relax and be myself and live the way I wanted. And I loved it so much. And just it being taken away from me, like just all those years of not feeling at home in my living situations really caught up with me that week. And it just hit me so hard emotionally. I just like sobbed the rest of the day. It was really intense. And I went into like a period of like mourning and grieving that I had never really felt truly at home, and that I didn't feel a sense of home. I think like for the next month, I would like cry at least like once a day, every day for like an entire month. Like it just took a really long time to finally settle down. And one thing that has helped me moving forward find a better sense of home and find a little bit more rest and a little bit more comfort and safety in my living situation has been living by myself, not having to feel like I have to hide when I go home, finally coming home being associated with feelings of rest and safety and comfort. And so the idea of feeling at home hasn't hit me so hard. Like that has started to feel a little bit more settled in my heart over the last 4 years, which has been really nice. So that's one reason why I like living alone.
Yeah. I was curious about that because you are definitely more outgoing than I am. And I guess the stereotype or the perception would be like, oh, somebody like that who clearly just is a people person. Like, I think you're great with people. You work with kids, and like there's this assumption that somebody like that would want to live in a place with at least a few roommates around, so that there's always like people around, because that's how you get energy from. Yeah. But I mean, we all need time by ourselves. And I know from the other end of the spectrum, for me, like it's been helpful for me, despite some loneliness here and there, certainly. Like there's a sense that if I'm proactive about my time with people, and if I do a good job with self-care and just making sure that my place of home is a place to rest and recharge, rejuvenate, like I think it really has served me well these last few years, especially when I've been more intentional to try new groups and meet new people and put myself out there in more situations. Like to be able to do that and come home to a place knowing that I'm going to get my alone time. Like it'll be there. Yeah. It's there waiting for me. It's not going to something I have to fight for or try to find. Like I have the blessing of like, I have too much of that, and I need to be more proactive to find people to spend time with. And so having a home by myself, living alone, like it's been a really great positive thing by and large for these last few years, because yeah, I feel like it's charged me up to know that it's time to go. It's time to get social. It's time to put myself out there. Yeah. And there have been times in my life where I haven't done that, and I've definitely felt the lethargy and the apathy of not putting myself out there and not socializing and not relating with people as much as I should. Yeah. And so that's the danger, is like if you live alone, like you could potentially let that consume you and never leave, or that's how I have done for seasons of my life. But definitely, but when tended to well, it's been a really great positive thing. It's just nice to like look around and see like everything here is mostly here for a reason. Sometimes there's some things that are just laying there. I don't know why I'm letting that stay there, but for the most part, this is my place. I have everything the way I want it. It's my culture, and hopefully creating a place of hospitality that others can come in and enjoy it as well. But like, but ultimately having it be a place of refuge has been a game changer for me the last few years of living alone. So I've enjoyed it. It sounds like you have as well.
Yeah,
very
I have
similar
as well.
timeline. Yeah, 4 or 5 years, something like that.
Yeah, very similar timeline. Yeah, I'm going into my 5th, so I think probably the exact same timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that piece about hospitality, that's definitely something I love about living alone as well, because I can have friends and family over, and like I can invite my siblings over, and they don't have to worry when I'm not with a roommate. They don't have to worry about like being like holding back sometimes. And they can just fully relax and be their loud, impolite selves. Sometimes, we can be raucous and we can yell at each other about whether the friend at my best friend's wedding was gay or not, with the movie from Julia Roberts, which is something we yelled about the other day. And it was great. We didn't have to worry about anything, and they can just not hold back. And I can also invite, side B friends in from out of town, and they don't have to worry about, holding back at all. And they can just feel comfortable being themselves. So that's something else I love about being alone.
Yeah. this is like to a fault. I'm always worried about what people are thinking or feeling. So like if there's a roommate in the other room, like that would be my thought too. It's like, are we being too loud, or if they go and like go to the bathroom and like just hear things or see things, like what are they thinking? Or like, so just to remove that like extra layer of distraction in your home, it has been a joy for me, and sounds like for you as well.
Me as well.
Yeah, just to have your space.
And that's also me to a fault as well. Definitely coming out of and working through a lot of people-pleasing tendencies, a lot of like performance, unhealthy Enneagram 3 kind of stuff. But I feel like honestly the people-pleasing is probably even a bigger piece of that. But as I have really sought to become more comfortable, like being my authentic self and letting people into my authentic self and showing up as myself and showing up and not being on, but just like being comfortable being off all the time. As I've like seen God like unwind all of that like tightly strung, have to be on, have to perform mentality. And as I've seen God also start to like peel back some of those like people-pleasing impulses, it's been helpful to, as I've grown in that, to still not have to worry about that at home. Like not that be a place where I also am having to work on showing up as my authentic self, showing up and being vulnerable, and working on not people-pleasing as much at home. Like I've been able to just focus on growing in those areas of my life in other aspects of life. And then I can just come back home and rest and relax. Yeah. Though definitely the downside for me is exactly like what you said about seasons of, I'm very prone to isolate. I really struggle with anytime I feel like I'm not at 100, and anytime I feel like I'm going through a difficult time, or don't have everything all put together to show up and be impressive. I have a really hard time in inviting people into that and letting myself be seen as, imperfect and messy and human and not impressive, actively unimpressive and unattractive. It's really hard for me to allow myself to be seen like that. And so I still struggle so much with withdrawing and isolating, and living alone makes it so easy to do that. And that's something I struggle with constantly and have not figured out. And that's something that anytime I have lived, like this summer, I lived with roommates because I was in between places, and it was such a wonderful experience because I like had more accountability to not withdraw into myself, and there was less opportunities for me to really kind of collapse into myself and isolate and withdraw. And I really benefited from that. So I am now at a place where I feel like I've grown enough to where if an opportunity presented, I think, and if it was to live with someone with whom I felt comfortable and safe, I think I could do that. And so I'm finally open to the idea of potentially not living alone, but I also feel very comfortable living alone.
I know it would be hard to give it up at this point. I would take a lot. It would take a lot.
Yeah.
I think a game changer for me is having groups on the calendar, because I used to be in a place when I first moved out. I don't know. I'm trying to think real quick. I don't think I had maybe one group every other week or something, but I didn't have much regularity as far as scheduled times that it's like a defined meeting time for a group of people, whether it's with a church or what have you. And I think that's been huge for me to, like, as somebody who kind of needs that structure in my life, especially if I'm going to live by myself, like I have to know that there's 3 days a week, not every single night. I'm not somebody who needs to socialize every single night. I do not need that. But if I can have 2 or 3 nights a week where there's something happening that I know I'm invited to, and that there's something that we're all going to get together to do, then that's been a huge help for me to not just isolate the whole time, because that's all too easy to do. So
the scheduling thing and that consistency is so helpful for me. If you're wanting to like initiate or deepen a friendship with me, if you propose like, hey, do you want to like regularly talk like every few months or every few weeks or whatever, like I would just eat that up. That is so helpful for me, just psychologically, and also just living alone. Like every piece of that is so helpful. And the groups that do meet every single week, or that has also just been such a helpful thing in, not isolating and making sure I'm having accountability to get out and not withdraw. And very, very helpful.
Yeah. It's cool to, just hear the last couple episodes, people living by themselves, and not like in a miserable sense. Like I get a sense that it's life-giving for all of us. So I appreciate, I also appreciate the honesty about the things that can be challenging about it too. So thanks for sharing that, Dawson. I would love to hear now, like how you grew up, because I'm intrigued, and our paths intersected long ago. We just had no idea at the time. So tell us about how you grew up here in Georgia, like your family, your upbringing, the homes you lived in. Kind of catch us up to speed to the present day, and whatever stories come to mind.
Pineapple. Are we gonna say?
Pineapple is our safe word. Is our code word. Wait, what
are we gonna say the name of the church where we grew up?
No, don't say the name.
Good to know.
You can describe a lot about it, but but don't say the name. We'll keep the name a secret. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Pineapple.
And pineapple.
I grew up going to the same church my entire life, for like longer than most of the pastors and staff. How old am I? Okay. I went to the same church for over 25 years. I guess over 28 years. I don't know how old I am. But I went to the same Southern Baptist church and grew up in a family of 6 kids. We moved like around town a couple of times. And then we had a big move when we moved into a place, and then it all burned down. And then that was a big time of transition, but it's always been within Athens or right beside Athens.
When you say it all burned down, you're meaning literally. It literally burned down.
Huge house fire.
You just glazed right over that. Like, my house burned down.
Yes.
Well, let's focus on that for a second. What happened? What was that about?
It was an electrical fire. There had been like a really cold winter for Georgia, and it really hailed. And there was like a big ice storm or thunderstorm, and some electrical thing in the attic got all messed up, and it caught fire while we were away at church. And then we get back from church. I'm still in my uncomfortable, nice Sunday clothes, but I'd taken my shoes off, and I was reading a nature magazine, a Christian nature magazine, of course. and I was like sitting upstairs at the piano, and then my mom sees smoke coming from the attic. And so she gets us all outside, and we have to run outside barefoot and running on gravel and go across the street and watch our house burn down. Our van, our 15 passenger van was in the garage, and it blew up, and it was very exciting. We got to see
that is wild.
I was 7 years old. Definitely a big time of, honestly, I feel like my life falls into like PF and AF. Pre-fire and after fire.
Okay.
After the fire, I struggled a lot more with feeling isolated within my big family, and in having to perform and in having to have everything together, and then being responsible to like carry my family's good name. And that's kind of feels like when everything fell apart. And like after that, moving forward, like I have different siblings dealing with different mental health issues and difficulties, and different physical health difficulties and sicknesses and illnesses. And we were homeschooled at the time, and
Another homeschooler.
Another homeschooler.
Here we are.
The few, the proud, the homeschoolers.
The not so few, but yes.
Yeah, the
so
many, the proud, or not so proud. Many of us are not. And I just being like the good, quote unquote, good kid who never really got in trouble, who really loved to read and was really academically motivated. I just kind of, my parents really let me do my own thing. And I've felt pretty neglected by my parents while they all dealt with all these other issues with all my other siblings. And, my house became just a really stressful environment, because I never knew when there would be some kind of like blow up argument. And I always felt like I would see siblings being imperfect and getting in trouble, and getting on my parents' bad side, or what it seemed. And then I felt an immense amount of pressure to be perfect and to keep the peace and to help my parents and my siblings like feel better. And so anytime I was inside the house with my parents and with my siblings, and that was also around when I was realizing my own sexuality. And so I just felt like I couldn't be myself. I couldn't be imperfect. I couldn't be a problem to my parents. Like, they were dealing with too much financially, and with all these other siblings who were giving them a lot of difficulty. And so every time I was walked inside, it just felt like a battleground, and felt like it was like stepping on a landmine at any second. And I always had to perform when I was in the house. And the only time I could feel like safe and comfortable just to relax and to not be on was when I was either locked in my bedroom. But even then, it still felt tense because we had an intercom system, and I never knew when I'd get called away from my bedroom, or when my mom would like get on to me for being alone in my bedroom. And so really the main place I felt safe was outside, like in the woods, away from the house. I grew up on from 7 years old on, I lived on a farm. And that was even true even while our house was being rebuilt. We lived in a trailer on the property, but we still lived on the property. And we were very crowded into that trailer, by the way. 8 people, all very tall, big people, crammed into a trailer for 2 years. I have like very little memory of that period of my life. Yeah. I just remember like the start of it. I remember like when the house burned down and getting to stay at friends' house. And I felt very alone and felt very unsafe in the house. And so, yeah, the only place where I felt safe and comfortable was for short periods of time when I'd be able to like go off into the woods and go away from the property and just be outside. But you can only stay out there for so long in this Georgia heat. And so, yeah, just growing up, I felt very uncomfortable, unsafe in my home environment. I felt like I couldn't be myself. I felt like I didn't have a voice, like that I was only valued for being good, being impressive in public, and for having good listening, empathetic skills. So it's like, I felt like my job at home, I would clock in every day to be the counselor and just sit and listen to my mom and my sister's difficulties and their problems. And yeah, I didn't get the feeling of like coming back home at the end of the day and getting to rest and relax. I always felt tense at home, unless I was outside or unless I was like lost in some game. That was like, I was so competitive that was the only thing that allowed me to like focus enough and kind of block off the outside world enough to really like enjoy myself, as if we were in the middle of playing a game or like watching a movie, or if I was reading a book. Those were all really helpful things that I really craved, to be able to escape the stressful physical home environment.
So I wanted to interject because you mentioned this Southern Baptist church.
Yeah.
And it was like around that time, probably whenever you had that fire. Like, what year was that?
2000.
2000. Because I moved to Georgia 1999.
Wow.
And then probably started going to this church either later that year or early 2000. So that was about when I entered the state.
Yeah.
A little before that. And so like, yeah, the fact that I went to this church, the same exact church that you and your family went to for however many years, if not decades, is pretty wild. And then it just got wilder than that because I basically indirectly wrote about your dad in my book because I went to this youth group and your dad was a youth leader and I was the only guy in my grade, and there would be many Sundays. I don't even know, 20, 30 Sundays, 15, 20 Sundays. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but like it would just be me and your dad at a table talking about whatever the lesson was that day. And then my dad also taught like the fifth graders, I think, fourth or fifth graders, something like that. Yeah. And so you would have never had that same experience that I had with your dad, but you.
Oh, they led a Sunday school class for me.
Yeah. My
Mr.
dad
Z.
and my mom, they led a Sunday school class that you would have gone through at some
I never
point.
would have had the one-on-one experience.
No, that's what I was saying. Like never the one-on-one experience. So,
yeah.
So it's just so funny to me that's how, and the only reason I know you is just the same way I know everybody else in YOB is like, you just found our community by however method you found it. So it's not like you found my name and was like, wait, I know that guy. Like, no, we figured that out like long after you joined the community. So it was pretty wild.
Very crazy.
So that was just a little tangent story about the church. But what I wanted to ask you then is like, cause you talk about, growing up in a large family and especially the trailer scene of like being crammed physically in a space like that. Like for me, this is just how I'm wired. For me, I would be like, get me to graduation day and get me to another state, another city, another place. And yet you have remained in Athens, Georgia. So I want to try to figure out what prompted you to stay, or did you ever think about leaving, or how did you work through those feelings of like being, you've described yourself to me privately, maybe on the podcast too, as like the show pony of your family. Like, be the impressive person, the good person, the empathetic listening person. Like that has to take its toll as a child, no less, for years and years and years. So like, definitely. How did you, as an adult, figuring out college, figuring out jobs, like how did you decide to stay? Obviously you don't live with your family anymore, but like, right. But, as far as still staying here locally, like what's been your process for that? Yeah.
So after high school, I actually came very close to going to a small private Christian college in Virginia. I actually think there are maybe Yobbers who are alumni alumni of Patrick Henry College.
The Fighting Patricks.
I don't know. I came very close, very close. But really the main reason why I stayed was financially. I got some scholarships to be able to go, but I wasn't able to get the full scholarship to be able to, I wasn't able to get all of it covered to go to Patrick Henry. And so I went to the University of Georgia for very practical reasons, initially, of them having the Hope Scholarship Fund and the Zell Miller Scholarship Fund. The Hope Scholarship Fund paid by the Georgia Lottery, which allows in-state students, have a full ride, essentially, if they keep up their grades.
That's why I went to UGA.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. So there was a lot of financial motivation.
Yes.
Yeah, I resonate with that.
A lot of financial motivation. And I had a miserable experience at UGA. I loved high school. I went to like a homeschool co-op type situation that I really loved, like a school of the classics, and it was like my Hogwarts, and I loved it. And I had great friends, and good community. Relatively, I still wasn't very open, and honest and really authentically myself, but then, but as much as I could be at the time. And then in college, I was living at home to save money. I was working at Starbucks, and I just did not plug into community. I was super isolated, and I was hating Athens at the time. And just had a really miserable few years, was very depressed. And I can't remember when it clicked. I wish I could tell you when it started to change. I just vaguely remember, like, at a certain point, just starting to change my mentality, change my attitude towards Athens, and started to choose to think of the things that I liked about Athens, and started to choose to not dwell so much on the things that I didn't like. And then slowly I started to kind of like embrace and like and enjoy and appreciate Athens. It took until a few years after I graduated, but I was able to eventually, I think it was just God kind of working in my heart as well, and like softening my heart. I was eventually able to come around, and it probably also happened around the same time as finally finding, after graduation, starting moving into working for this Christian college ministry and finding good community. And that probably also really helped. For the longest time, I hated Athens and wanted to get out, but just felt like I couldn't for financial reasons. So then...
Well, that's interesting to me. I have not heard this underbelly of disdain for Athens. I had no idea that was there.
And I also used to hate the go dogs, rah rah, collegiate loyalty.
It's a very fratty, it's an SEC school, so it's like, not to be judgmental against SEC schools, but they love their college football, they love their frats, they love their parties. It's like it's a vibe that I don't associate with, but it's a unique thing.
I started to come around on that because I realized I had disdain for the whole like collegiate loyalty and the go dogs kind of rah rah thing of it all, because I craved being unique and like wanting to go against the grain, and like I wanted to find like identity in being different, but in accepting and growing in humility and in realizing that like there's nothing, I don't lose any sense of like uniqueness or value if I'm a part of a group, if I'm a part of a crowd, if I'm doing what everyone else is doing. Once I realized that and like really accepted that, then I really came to embrace like the collegiate loyalty. And I then kind of wrapped my arms around and kind of, even though I didn't feel necessarily included, I kind of included myself, which then allowed me to feel included in the collegiate loyalty, Georgia football watching crew. That was definitely like a mind shift change of previously looking down on the fraternity culture, the like football watching culture, and then letting go of my judgment of that group, and then letting go of any need to be validated or to have identity in being different. And then just that allowed me to like really embrace it and enjoy it for what it was, and not have to find identity in being different from that. So now I really love and watch football games with people, and we'll try to keep up with it, and have loyalty to the dogs, and can be really cheesy and, say go dogs, and not feel ridiculous for it.
Yeah.
And just embrace the cheese.
I guess I just didn't stay around long enough for the Lord to soften my heart as he clearly did with you. Because meanwhile, I was like 1 year after graduation, I was like, I am out of here, going to California and away we go with the rest of my life. But it's really cool to just hear though you working through some feelings of disdain, of feeling like you were maybe not where you wanted to be here, but then yeah, now you bleed Georgia red, it feels like. And,
I do.
And there's just like, I know you have an affinity for living here, and it's been great to connect with you here over the last couple of years and just start to redeem Athens a little bit. Cause I am seeing it through the eyes, somebody who attaches a lot of loneliness and a lot of isolation and a lot of awkwardness to living here.
Yeah.
Like being able to just see it, strip away those feelings, and then just see like the beautiful campus, because UJ has a gorgeous campus. It's really beautiful. And just be able to appreciate it, I guess, through a new lens. So I've enjoyed that after a hard 11 years here.
I'm so glad you've experienced that. That's another thing too. I feel like God has done a work in me to open my eyes to find like beauty all around me, beauty in like unexpected places. I've come to, and I'm really glad God has done this in me, I've come to not need for the place to be like perfect or obviously beautiful, to still find like little pockets of beauty and things to admire, and seeing little pockets of God's creation and just beautiful things and little things to admire and look at in a different way. Even though a lot of Athens is ugly, and even the best parts of Athens aren't like stunning or gorgeous or like screensaver worthy, I feel like God has done a work in me to just appreciate the beauty for what it is, and not need it to be more, not need it to be perfect, but just accept it for what it is, flaws and all. So I initially stayed in Georgia for financial reasons. And then after I graduated and I'd left the college ministry, there were times where I was at like a reset moment where I realized I didn't have the community I needed, where a lot of friends left Athens, and a lot of community that I did have then went away, because Athens is a very transient city. A lot of people are like just come in for school and then leave, usually to go to either like Atlanta or Nashville. And that's what most of my friends did after I worked at the ministry. And it definitely wasn't the only time where I've like built up some community and then found myself needing to kind of start all over again, but being in the same city. And by that point, what really prompted me to stay, what motivated me to stay, was my family being still local and still nearby. Growing up, I really struggled to connect with my little brothers. I really easily connected with my sisters and my mom, which is kind of like the classic like gay kid experience. And I really had a hard time with my brothers. And I felt a lot of conviction and guilt. Like I encountered the Lord at a young age, and I really got close to God in those years of feeling really neglected and abandoned and isolated. And because I would just turn to, I feel like I had no one to talk to, so I would just turn and talk to God in prayer and really connected with him that way. And I really felt a lot of conviction for feeling like I was doing a bad job as an older brother, and for not being patient with them. Like I felt like I was so patient and kind and gentle and empathetic with everyone else except for my brothers and my dad. And over the years, coming into adulthood, I've really seen God really redeem and really do an incredible work of restoration in my relationship with my brothers. And we meet up once or twice every month to just have a big hangout day where we eat a lot of food and watch a lot of stuff and play games. And it's just become like my favorite part of every month. And I love it so much. And I've grown so much closer to my brothers to where they're now just like my favorite people. And so coming into adulthood, when I had different choices and when I felt like a need to go somewhere else where there's better community, where I would be closer with friends, and where I could even like have fresh starts. I felt the need and the urge and the desire to have fresh starts several times. But what's really kept me here is my proximity to my family and being able to host my brothers and being able to really connect with them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really cool. It's cool when you can stay somewhere, the longer you stay somewhere and the longer you lay roots, whether it's with your biological family or whomever is around, like to be able to have that sort of, I don't know, to be there through the seasons of things that are hard, but then to see them get better, to see God work however God likes to work, because generally it's slower than we would like it to be is kind of the consensus I feel from most people. It's like
slower, but it's always redemptive.
Yeah.
He is a redeemer. That's in his nature. That's what he does.
That's the goal. So there's this temptation in me to like change up my scenery and keep seeing new things and meeting new people. And there's some level of satisfaction in that, but I think there is a growing sense of duty or a sense of fulfillment in sticking around and seeing people, even if it might be a transient place, to see who sticks around and then to see what kind of relationship can build or grow or deepen. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful process. In our closing time, Dawson, we got a few minutes left. This phrase "at home," I'd love to explore that through the lens of faith, sexuality, masculinity. You're the final guest of the series, so you can steer it in any of those directions. So what jumps out to you when you hear that phrase "at home"? Like, do you feel a sense of belonging, a sense of contentment, or do you feel a lack in any of those areas?
Yeah. In terms of being at home in my faith, I definitely feel very at home in my faith, like my personal walk with God. I am at a point where it's like it's so much harder to start over when you're just living in the same place. And I have joined a new church. I found a church that I really want to be a part of and to be involved in. And I've been going there for like half a year now. But I don't feel at home there yet. And there is like, I know I'm at a point where I know I have to be more intentional, and I'm just bumping up against that like fear and anxiety that comes with like wondering whether people are safe enough to really bring my authentic self to them and allow myself to be seen.
So that intersects a lot with sexuality then, as you join a church, and maybe how open are you going to be about this part of your life, this part of your story? Yeah,
that it also just living close to home it's like my greatest joy in living in the same place where I've always lived is being close to home. And it's also like my greatest difficulty is being close to home and to my parents, and like never knowing when I'm gonna run into someone who like is a friend of my parents and then will then report back that they saw me and will give a report to my parents, and that's so stressful, and which happened all the time growing up. It was so jarring every single time. Like some friend of my mom going, "Hey, I saw so and so, and he seemed like this," and but yeah, and also just like having expectations from my parents to visit and be in contact more than I feel I'm able to do and more than feels comfortable. So that's a point of stress and difficulty. But yeah, and also I feel very comfortable with where I'm at with my sexuality, and I feel very comfortable talking with people, with friends who I feel safe with, and even acquaintances about my sexuality. But I am not out with all of my family. I came out to my parents, and that went not as well as I might have liked, which kind of made me lose momentum to come out to the rest of my siblings. And there's just, some difficulties in coming out to all of my family. Once I do come out to all my family, I think I'll feel much more at ease just being open with anyone about it. But just living in a relatively small town, or just living in a place where I just never know when I'm going to run into someone, or I never know who knows who, I just do worry about things getting back to my family. And so I do like hold back some in being open about my sexuality. So I feel like, again, there are things like with my faith and my sexuality, I feel very at home just with myself, like in my body and in my spirit. It's just when other people come into it that
I
makes
know,
it
that's
difficult.
the worst.
You know,
Other people ruin everything.
get in the way.
I
They
feel
do.
you.
They make things so complicated.
You mentioned earlier too about like the sports culture, the frat culture with like, how do you feel connecting with other men in this polo shirt, short khaki pants, boy culture that's here in Athens, Georgia? Like connecting with other men, being a man here, like how do you feel in your masculinity?
Yeah. This feels vulnerable to talk about and hard to admit, but I've realized recently that even though like I grew up being really good at code switching and being able to get by in those spaces because I love sports. And so I'm able to talk sports and play sports. And so that is really helpful and allows me to really make connections. But I've had to reckon with and realize the extent to which I still feel discomfort. Again, I feel so at peace in my own sense of masculinity. It's just other people ruin it. And yeah, I struggle with feeling totally at ease and comfortable with other men, especially older men.
As I said, you said older men at first. Was that a slip or was this?
Oh no,
that real?
That is the demographic I have the most difficult time with. I think some of it is still like, I grew up with harboring so much hatred and resentment and towards men and towards older men. And my parents did not have the best, healthiest relationship and for a lot of different reasons. And I really identified with all of the moms of like my friends and in the community who were like large and in charge and who were carried their families on their back and did everything for their families and had everything together and really adept socially and could read social cues and were really empathetic and good with people and good socially. And I felt like I related towards some of their like coming down on the like inept fathers. And I would look and see my friends' fathers be kind of like clueless or be especially like socially not very aware and who left a lot of the leadership of their families to the wives and who like the kind of like stereotype of like the wife like asking the husband to go do the dishes but then like correcting him because he wasn't doing it the right way, or the kind of like dynamic where the wife would tell the husband to go to the grocery store but then like the husband would mess things up and not get things exactly right, and so then she would have to fix it. And I really identified with that, and in my feeling neglected by men and feeling kind of othered by men and feeling very different and feeling like I related much more towards women, that turned towards a lot of like disdain and looking down on men and really hatred towards especially older men, masculinity. And that's been something I've had to really work through and wrestle through, and realizing that at the core of that hatred, what that was really masking was like a desire to belong and to be accepted and to be seen and to be safe and comfortable with men. So that's still stuff I'm working through, and it's stuff I've realized that is like a lot more in my heart, present in my heart than I've realized recently that's more present in my heart than I previously thought. I thought I'd worked through it when I'd worked through like forgiveness for my dad. It's like, oh yeah, I don't hate men anymore. But that still does kind of come up sometimes. There are still spaces, especially with older men, where I feel very uncomfortable and feel very unable to be a part of and to be belonging. It's like I still feel like my sense of my own masculinity, I feel very comfortable in it, and I feel like it doesn't have to fit the box. But then I feel so tense and so anxious when I'm in situations, especially with older men. And it's like, I don't know what to talk about, and I don't know how to relate to you, and I don't want to talk about stocks and bonds, and I don't make enough money to think about retirement and anything. And,
Yeah.
So yeah, still working through coming to a sense of home in my masculinity and realizing that there are still more pockets and more like work to be done there. It's, which is probably the case in all of these realms, that there's always more to see God redeem and work through.
I feel like I resonate with a lot of that as far as like when I think about my own faith and my own sexuality and my own masculinity, is if I like strip away anyone else around me, friends, acquaintances, celebrities, people at my church, people I know, people I don't know, like I feel pretty comfortable in all of those arenas. Like I've made a lot of strides, particularly in masculinity. Like that's always been my biggest one that I've struggled with, is feeling like a man or feeling man enough. And I feel like I've taken a lot of steps, whether it's physically with the gym or what I eat, or just like the aesthetic of where I live, like living alone and being able to choose what kind of furniture I have or what kind of plants, or if I have plants, or, any of that. And so there's so much about being a man, and just obviously vulnerability and emotional authenticity. There's so much that I'm proud of that I feel like, check marks across the board. But then it's like when I start, it's like Peter on the waves. When I start looking around, I'm like, look at that man, or look at that guy, or look at whether it's a gay person in their brand of sexuality and how they're making it work, or this straight man and his masculinity and what that looks like. And that's where it can start to be jarring or be confusing. Or when I look at other believers and I feel like they're stronger than I am, or they're wiser, or they're more accomplished, or they're doing more with their ministry, or, whatever the comparison trap is. I think that's something I've always been mindful of. That's something that I notice popping up in my life from time to time across all three of those arenas. And so, I don't know, to be at home, like I think there's some level of accountability that if we see somebody doing something and we want to aspire to be like them, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but like, can we find rest in our unique selves in those three arenas, our relationships with Jesus and our relationships with sexuality, masculinity, and can we, I don't know, find a sense of rest in who we are. And it's a process, it's a journey, but
it's always a work in progress.
Loved hearing everybody's perspectives this summer about where they are on this continuum of faith, sexuality, masculinity. It's been great to just hear from so many different people and to come straight to the belly of the beast of Athens, Georgia, and come out of it alive, come out of it with a sense of appreciation. That I'm glad for all the hardness that this city was. Like it's a part of my story, for better or worse, but ultimately for the better. Like I've done a lot of growing since here. And I did a lot of growing here, to be fair. And it's just inspiring, encouraging to hear somebody who's been here, weathered some of his own storms in this city, and have the level of connection and growth that you have now here is really cool. And it's been fun to be able to connect with you these last couple of years, Dawson.
I've really enjoyed it. Love getting to connect with you. It's so crazy that we didn't. You have the cutest church directory. I almost said yearbook photos, but cutest
Remember
church directory.
Church directories, everybody?
Oh my gosh. They were the best. That was like the social media of the day for me and for my family. Yeah. Like I would constantly look through.
For like our 1,000, 2,000 person church, however many people go there.
There were a lot. Yeah.
There was like this thick directory of family photos, and
so much fun to look through. And I remember like flipping through
those
it.
Were the worst days though.
Coming to the Z's and feeling,
I was always the last
Amigas.
one.
Yeah. That's Mr. Z.
Yeah, it's just one of those weird things. I often want to like view like the footage of our lives, because we must have crossed paths in a church hallway or the pew or something, and you would have been however many years younger than me, and so it would have been a huge age gap. But yeah, it's like
no, it would have been just like a 5
or 6 years. Yeah, so yeah.
Wait, no, less than that. How old are you right now?
37 right now.
Oh, you seem so much younger.
37. Yeah.
I'm 31.
Yeah. So 6-year gap. So you would have been significantly younger, but like I'm sure there's footage one day where we can watch in heaven where we were right next to each other.
I love that.
But just didn't even know it.
There are probably times where I looked over. I probably looked over at different times. I was like, wow, who's that cute older boy?
I'm sure. That was not me. That was not me. I don't know who you were looking at. That was not me.
Wow. I want to be like him when I grow older.
Well, Dawson, is there anything else you wanted to say? You have your notebook right next to you. Is there anything else that you just needed to say?
I think I accidentally covered everything.
Accidentally?
Yeah. It just all came up in the flow.
It was good. It was a good
conversation.
episode, good conversation, a good cap to this series. Yeah, I appreciate you're letting me crash not your house, but this beautiful eclectic home that you get to house sit every once in a while.
It feels like my house.
It's only fitting to record here today.
It really is. I definitely still feel very at home here, and so this is really full circle and feels very wonderful to be
I
able
do
to
too. I've
connect with
visited
here.
you. I think this is my 3rd time visiting you in this house. So
Yeah.
thanks to the owners of this house. We shall remain nameless. We appreciate y'all for being here and
Yes.
letting us record here unbeknownst to you.
Is there any last thing you want to say about your feelings about Athens?
Well, I just wanted to, I guess, close out first of all, let me give the plug to your episode page. So, and then I'll close out the series. So I'm curious if any of our listeners, if you've always lived somewhere, you've never left, maybe you've never left the borderlines of your city, or maybe it's just the general region. But yeah, if that's you, I'd be curious to hear your story and chip in some words and a question or two. Go over to yourotherbrothers.com/podcast. Find Dawson's episode about, I don't know, never leaving home, whatever it's going to be called. Always living somewhere. Yeah. Always living somewhere. And tell us that story about what that's like. And if you've had desires to leave and you never did, or you stuck it out and you're glad you did, or maybe you regret you did, or whatever your vantage point is from never leaving a place, would love to hear, how that's impacted your own journey with faith, sexuality, and masculinity. And then what I was going to say then to close the series, like we talked to over 10 people this summer, young or old, single or married, American, not American, with people, not with people. There's all kinds of configurations for how we're making life happen in this community. And I think that's the ultimate key that always ties all of these episodes together, is that nobody can do life alone. So even if you're living life alone, if you live alone rather, you still have to be connected to somebody just as much as you need to have a good diet, and you need to work out, or you need to have some sort of exercise regimen, or you need to not be addicted to your smartphones, or whatever the metrics of good health are.
Yeah.
Like having strong relational health, being connected socially to people, and especially as believers to other believers, like that's very vital. And so I hope this series was a window into that, and I hope it gave some things to ponder as far as like where are we falling short? Where could we push ourselves to maybe step out of our comfort zones a little bit, potentially? Finding that line, I came up a couple times in this series, the line between contentment or comfortability and complacency, and differentiating, like, where am I comfortable, like genuinely comfortable, and I feel a sense of peace and belonging with where I am, versus where am I feeling complacent and it's just feeling like it's too hard to try something new or do something different or step out in this way or that way with my faith, with my sexuality, with my masculinity. And so being able to differentiate those two, I think is something that is key as far as finding that sense of home in this life. And so that's something that I'm taking away from this series, and I really enjoyed getting to talk to everybody. So thank you, each and every one. I enjoyed every single conversation. There wasn't one that I had to like slog through. Like, it was all a beautiful journey this summer of being able to have these great conversations. And I look forward to doing this again next summer again, like picking a topic, going through 10 or 20 is probably too much, 10 or 12, I was about to say 10 or 12, like different people in our community, and just getting a nice little cross section. So thanks, Dawson. And thanks to everybody else who lended your story this summer. I really appreciate it. It was fun.
Amen. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs. Yeah. So there you go, y'all. I guess Georgia is how we're ending.
The last
If you would have
word.
told me when we started this series it'd be ending with Georgia, I would have shuddered. I was like, why? Why are we ending with Georgia? But Georgia's a fine state. I don't want anyone in Georgia listening to feel like I have this actual hate in my soul for you. That's for Florida.
Beautiful state. Yeah, Florida is, yeah. We can all come together on that.
Sorry, Florida. It's just the humidity and the heat. I can't. You mentioned the heat of Georgia. It's a lot. It's a lot. There are better places geographically from that standpoint. But anyway, fine people all around. And I'm glad I've gotten to connect with you, Dawson. So thank you. Good to have you. I guess when we do another podcast, you'll be back on Zoom maybe. Or maybe not. Maybe we'll record in person again.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Maybe I'll come to the Jewel of the Blue Ridge
Come to the
next time.
Jewel, yeah. Come to my home. Yeah, it's a better home. So thank you guys for listening to this series. We're about to take a little break now. We've got a retreat to plan, Dawson.
Woo!
we're gonna put that together in the next few weeks. And so
wait.
the podcast will be dark, if that's the right metaphor. Does the podcast go dark?
Yeah.
The
Dark
mic
in
goes
anticipation, waiting for the sun of the retreat to rise.
Yes, exactly. It'll be a few weeks of getting retreat prep going and getting a retreat together. Maybe giving myself a week or two to recuperate from that. And we'll be back. We'll be back later this fall to talk about something else. I don't know. We've been talking about home for so long. I have no idea literally what the next episode will be. So you'll just have to stay tuned and see. All right. That's it. I've got nothing else. It's time to pack up the mic into the carrying case, something I rarely do. And away we go. We'll be back again until we gather at home once again, but not in this series, just in a different context, but we'll be back. But goodbye now. Goodbye, Dawson.
Goodbye.
I feel like I'm already home.
Yay, we did it.
All right, y'all.
No, you're not actually going to include that. See, now I've included multiple things that you can't include.
Bonus segment. Okay, we'll close it out.
I thought we already closed out.
I'm going to say goodbye. And then
You've said goodbye like 3 times.
No.
About it's called Juno. And it cracks me up. I can't stop listening to it. It's just a really good song in general, but also the content is so funny. Do you remember the movie Juno?
I do.
So she's basically like, boy, I like you so much, I might let you make me Juno. She goes, one of me is
like
cute.
Impregnate me?
Like pregnate. Yeah. One of me is cute, but 2 though. Super cute. Cracks me up. I can't stop thinking about it.
So poetic.
So I'm just going along in the car, belting out, make me pregnant.
Basically. Well, we got that recorded, so maybe that'll be some bonus content. Maybe. We'll see.
No.
Bonus content. Always fun.
Gosh, I forgot you said you were recording.
I'm recording. Anything you say can
This feels like a
used.
journalist, what do you have to say? This is off the record.
Off the record, yeah.
My Juno, my
Hot take.
My impregnation comments are off the record.
Yeah. No, there is no off the record here. But as still as you can be, I know we'll have to both shift around at certain points, but
okay.
As still as you can be and project into, it'll still pick up, but try to direct your voice into the microphone.
Do I need like a safe word for
Pineapple.
shifting? Pineapple. I need to shift.
Yeah. Yeah. We can take some shifting breaks if we need to. But
this isn't very gay friendly for me to have to sit still in a chair.
Yeah.
Just sitting upright, facing one way the whole time.
Right.
Instead of letting me my arms and legs go
Flail.
akimbo and flay around and sit halfway on it.
Yeah. All the special
Feels a little
things.
homophobic.
I know. It's just the way it is. We could have been doing this on Zoom though, so at least I'm here.
Yeah.
What a journey.
Wow.
All right.
Get tactile.
Yeah, tactile.
Why did you think of pineapple for a safe word?
I don't know. I just literally the first word that came to mind. Yeah.
Do you watch the television show Psych?
No, I thought you were about to say SpongeBob SquarePants.
Do you watch SpongeBob?
I do not. No. I do not.
Okay, I'm going to shift seats. I'm going to
Okay.
shift. All right, pineapple. Okay. All right, pineapple. Okay. Do you ever do ASMR?
Like, here's a good. No, I don't.